evening, everybody, and welcome to Late Night in Canada. I'm your host, Clare Blackwood. How's everybody doing tonight? Filled with rage after a week of rising COVID cases, vaccine confusion, and governmental fuck-ups on a colossal and deadly scale? Me too! Let's make jokes about it to distract ourselves from the pain. Let's get to the news with This Week in the North. On Monday, Ontario officially closed in-person schools because of the province's record-breaking COVID numbers, which somehow refused to go down despite absolutely zero effort on the provincial government's behalf. Doctors and scientists had been calling on Ford and Education Minister Stephen Lecce to close schools for weeks, so naturally Ford acted like he was a big goddamn hero when he finally got around to it.
With COVID spreading like wildfire, with these deadly variants taking hold in Ontario, we simply can't be too cautious right now. We have to be proactive.
Ford went on to also promise to be proactive about the Spanish flu, double-checking safety measures in the Titanic, and crushing the Upper Canada Rebellion. Also on Monday, CSIS reported that 2020 had the highest levels of foreign espionage and interference in Canada since the conclusion of the Cold War, with its director stating, "The fluid and rapidly evolving environment caused by COVID-19 has created a situation ripe for exploitation by threat actors seeking to advance their own interests." All I have to say to that is, well, at least some actors are still working. On Tuesday, billionaire Loblaws tycoon and man watching his employees be denied paid sick leave, Galen Weston died at age 80. Loblaws staff stated that dying was the nicest thing Weston had ever done for them. Also on Tuesday, upon facing accusations that his vaccine rollout was confusing, Ford took to the microphone to clear things up in a calm, professional manner. Just kidding. He insulted the entire province.
For the folks that find it confusing, I have to tell you that 2.8 million people didn't find it confusing. 3.3 million that we had vaccinated didn't find it confusing. So if I'm doing the math right, we're well over 6 million people that didn't find it confusing. Folks, it's very, very simple.
That's right, folks. It couldn't be simpler. All you have to do is be between the ages of 18 and 49, live in the postal code Doug Ford is thinking of right now, drive to Sault Ste. Marie, descend into a magical portal underneath the local A&W, and explain the entire plot of Christopher Nolan's Tenet to a woman who might be a witch. So simple. On Wednesday, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, seen here petting his invisible oil drum, agreed to join the premiers of Ontario, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick in signing a small nuclear reactor agreement. Kenney then went on to say that he plans to use the nuclear reactor to blow the entire province of Alberta out of Canada and into a country that loves oil as much as he does. And for the more important story on Wednesday, Liberal MP Will Amos was caught naked in a virtual House of Commons after getting changed without realizing that his camera was on. Onlookers called it the first time the House of Commons has ever been interesting. On Thursday, in a dramatic shift away from his party's long-held view that paying extra for carbon was just as horrifying as admitting climate change is real, Aaron O'Toole announced his plan for carbon pricing. The plan consists of a loyalty card type of pricing where every time a consumer pays extra for fuel, the carbon charges will go into a special account that could be put towards green purchases later on. It's an interesting, if odd, solution, but for a man adamantly against the idea of a carbon tax, it sounds suspiciously like a carbon tax with a fancy little spin on it.
This is not a tax at all.
Oh, okay, but you're making them pay extra for carbon just like Trudeau's tax is, and...
This is not a tax at all.
Okay, but you are literally charging people every time they buy fuel. Just instead of giving that money back to them in rebate form, it goes into a fun little account and...
This is not a tax at all.
You're just terrified your party will kick you out if you call it a tax, aren't you?
This is not a tax at all.
Okay, buddy, it's not a tax. On Friday, well, if you haven't heard about the big story on Friday, firstly, congratulations on fashioning what I hope is a comfortable house under that rock. And secondly, would you like a roommate? I don't cook very well, but my cat is very cute and will only bite you on odd-numbered days, or if your name is Pamela for some reason. But in all seriousness, on Friday, official predictions indicated that Ontario could be looking at a pants-shitting 30,000 cases a day by the end of May if more severe lockdown restrictions aren't implemented. Premier Ford had the audacity to try to pin the blame entirely on the federal government's vaccine rollout.
The pace of our vaccine supply has not kept up with the spread of the new COVID variants.
Nope, you do not get to do that. This is on you, you potato-faced dumpster fire. You refused to listen to what everyone was screaming at you to do for months, and now we're here, and you're still not growing a pair and doing what needs to be done. Instead, Ford announced more dumbass province-wide restrictions, including limiting outdoor gatherings to households only, closing outdoor sports and campgrounds, refusing to close indoor places of worship, and, most horrifyingly, giving new powers to police that will let them stop anyone at any time and ask them why they're outside and what their home address is. Now, it's a little difficult to pinpoint who's going to suffer most from giving the police carte blanche to card people, but I'm sure that if we all sit and think really hard about it, and oh wait, no, it's people of color. It's people of color and low-income and essential workers. Premier Ford refused Prime Minister Trudeau's offer to send in the Red Cross to aid with vaccinations in long-term care homes, a day after he begged other provinces for help. This is like if the captain of the Titanic sat there and watched the iceberg get closer for 2 whole hours, and instead of calmly steering his boat a few meters to the left, he throws the life jackets overboard, tells everyone to stay inside their rooms, and then sets all the lifeboats on fire. And then, when the ship starts sinking, he blames the accident on the ship's maintenance staff for hanging out in groups in the boiler room, and then calls off the rescue ship while he flies away in his own personal escape helicopter. And yes, I am very aware that helicopters were not a thing in 1912, but you know that if they were, he would have done it. And that is what matters in this historical fiction. Emphasis on the fiction. Police forces across the province have come out and said that they won't be following the Premier's orders to stop and card random people, but forgive me if I'm skeptical. So hey, fellow white folks, look out for marginalized people. If you see police being dicks just because they can, call it out, film it, do what you can to make sure that the people statistically hit hardest by this pandemic aren't also fucked over by an enforcement system that will undoubtedly target them. Oh, and please keep yelling at Doug Ford and his cronies on every single platform you have, because that man is trying to take away my ability to sleep in a tent, pee in the woods, and have my food stolen by astoundingly resourceful raccoons, and I take that very personally. This has been This Week in the North. I'm sure that you've been able to suss out my feelings towards Ontario's Premier Doug Ford in these last 2.5 months. But if it's still not clear, he sucks. He sucks so bad. Last week, someone asked me if I kept a specific notepad with me wherein I write down Doug Ford insults to use for the show, and I actually do. I have a special file in my phone's notes folder that's called Love Letters for Doug, and it's filled with such 4 a.m. gems as head equals shriveled old golden retriever, and always looks like he's taking a secret poop. So I thought, fuck it. Let's really break this guy down and dig into what he's about. And not just so I can finally get rid of a lot of the stuff in my Love Letters for Doug folder, but also because I think it's important to understand how we ended up with him and how it could very well happen again. The last thing we want to do is just assume that just because he shit the bed so badly this pandemic that the bed now has to be set on fire and launched into space, that people won't vote for him again. We're going to talk about who Doug Ford is, how he got elected, what he has done since, and what this means for the next provincial election in this week's The Focus. So just who is Ontario's Premier? Well, born Oswald Chesterfield Cobblepot, he was bullied as a child and only had birds for friends and, oh shit, sorry, that's the penguin, my bad, I get them confused all the time. To sum up, this is Doug. Doug is an Ontario businessman from Etobicoke who co-runs a printing business with his brother Randy. The business was founded by their father, who was an Ontario MPP from 1995 to 1999. Doug got into politics in '94 when progressive conservative and fellow Doug Holliday, asked him to print some stickers for his Etobicoke mayoral race and started canvassing for him until Ford Sr. brought him on to assist with his political campaigns in '95 and '99. Now, already we're kind of getting the sense that Doug Ford might not have had to have the same political intellect and qualifications as his peers, because who needs intellect and qualifications when you have money and nepotism? Money in politics? Bring me my fainting couch! Doug Ford ran his brother Rob's... Oh, remember Rob Ford, the guy who put Toronto on the world map for being an utter embarrassment of a mayor who smoked crack, skipped work to go to football practices, stated that if you are not doing needles and you are not gay, you won't get AIDS probably, and once ran a woman over during a Toronto City Council meeting?
And as he rushes around to confront the member of the public, he knocks over Councillor Pam McConnell, holding on to her before she hits the floor.
Ah, memories. Doug ran Rob's council campaigns in his successful 2010 mayoral run. He was viewed as the power behind the throne, the little finger to Rob's Robert Baratheon. Smarter, more dangerous, and probably owned brothels. I'm not sure, but wouldn't put it past him. Despite his family's wealth, people gravitated towards the brothers because of their men of the people attitude and their promise to stop the gravy train and get the money back into taxpayers' wallets. How? Somehow, that's how. Doug succeeded Rob in becoming city councillor in 2010, and in 2014, when Rob left his mayoral re-election race due to the cancer that would eventually take his life, Doug took over at the last second like they were reenacting a scene from The Parent Trap. He lost the election to John Tory, seen here remembering that John Tory exists, ran for leadership of the PC party in early 2018, and won in March of that year after campaigning on a plan to improve the province's healthcare system, to which I think we can all look back and say, LOL. Okay, now he's the leader of the PC party. But how did he become premier, unseating 15 years of Liberal rule in Ontario with a past marred with drug dealings, inappropriate council behaviour, and a reliance on hair gel that makes him look like he dipped his head in Elmer's glue and then attacked himself with a rake? Well, I got 3 words for you: money and Kathleen Wynne. First, money. The important thing to know is that in Canada, unions and corporations are not allowed to donate to political parties. However, they are allowed to donate to third interest parties. Enter Ontario Proud, a right-wing Facebook-based group that raised over $500,000 for Ford's Conservatives in the 2018 election, almost all of it from corporations and this is where it gets juicy, construction companies and developers like Mattamy Homes, a Toronto-based residential developer that came under fire last week for, and I could not make this up if I tried, its workers holding a stripper party in one of their construction sites. Remember how Doug Ford has refused to shut down construction during the pandemic? Yeah, I wonder if it has anything to do with how much that industry contributed to getting him elected. I guess we'll never know. Ontario Proud also used its money to finance attack ads against Conservative opponents across YouTube, Facebook, and TV to great effect. They were like a really well-funded pit bull trotting at Doug Ford's heels, snapping at anyone who stood in his way. Second, Kathleen Wynne. The Liberal Party had been in charge for 15 years, and their popularity was steadily declining. People were tired of the Liberals in the way that the US was with people like Hillary Clinton. They were seen as too establishment, too centrist, too boring, and too out of touch with regular people. Premier Kathleen Wynne was at the epicenter of that hate. People just didn't like her. She campaigned for scary-sounding things like new sex ed curriculums and carbon pricing, dealt with financial scandals, and suffered a huge blow in popularity when she partially privatized Hydro One, causing Ontarians' hydro bills to surge. Oh, and she was gay and a woman, but I'm sure that had nothing to do with her unpopularity. Ford, on the other hand, burst into the race like a coked-up Kool-Aid man, promising things like buck-a-beer, cutting the gravy-filled government spending, getting rid of that pesky climate-saving cap-and-trade program, and tax cuts for all the right people. He appealed to the little guy. David Hurl, Wynne's campaign co-chair, explained Ford's popularity best when he said, "I think that at the core of his vote is an extremely angry group of people who feel victimized by change and feel that their relative status in the world has been declining. And they're angry about it, and they don't care. When the mainstream media says, hey, these guys are going to burn the house down, they don't care. They hate the house." When the election happened, the Liberals suffered a crushing defeat, losing official party status, and Doug Ford stomped his way into office like an everyman's Godzilla, promising to fight for the common man. Where have we heard that before? Oh yeah! So Ford gets voted into office. I'm not going to spend too much time going over every single shitty thing he's done in the last 3 years, because frankly we've all lived through it and are paying the price as I speak. But notable examples of Ford's government actions include freezing public sector wage increases at 1%, eliminating the Indigenous Culture Fund, cutting $1 billion from Toronto Public Health over the next 10 years, which has clearly worked out just great for us, and cutting funds from countless projects and sectors including e-health, libraries, schools, music, stem cell research, women's shelters, childcare, and I don't know, puppy daycares probably. On top of that, his catastrophically poor pandemic response has created mass confusion about everything from half-assed lockdown measures and vaccine availability, and led to thousands of deaths in long-term care homes across the province. All this because Wynne wasn't likable enough and spent too much money on hydro. That's like dumping your boyfriend because he spends too much money on video games, and then starting to date a guy whose favorite activity is murdering people in long-term care homes. Ford got into politics because of family connections and money, and stayed in politics because of family connections and money, and has no right being in charge of a fucking Foot Locker, let alone a province. So, after all this, it's pretty clear that Ontario has had enough of Doug Ford and is dying to vote him out in the next election, right? Like, people are literally dying, so we'll be voting him out, right? Spoiler alert, No! If you need it, take a quick second to scream. I'll wait, and while I won't scream with you because I'll blow out my microphone, just know that I'm screaming on the inside. Here we go! Wasn't that fun? Okay, so here's the bad news. A recent poll from Ledger, Canada's largest market and analytics company, states that if an Ontario election were held today, like right now, Ford and the Conservative Party would handily win again with a margin of over 10 points, especially with men and people over 35. And don't just take that poll's word for it. Most polls conducted in the last year put the Conservatives ahead, with each dot here representing a different survey or analysis. And before those of us in Toronto get on our left-wing high horses about this, turns out the Ledger poll has the city split in three-way tie between the PCs, the Liberals, and the NDPs, so we can't even be smug about this. You heard me. Data has ruined our ability to shit on the 905ers. This is an official emergency. Blaming the GTA for our problems is literally what Torontonians are best at. It's up there with pretending to like IPAs and slacklining in parks on our list of favorite pastimes. So what does this mean for Ontario's future? Well, it means that Ford's opponents in the next year's election can't expect to just use his abysmal pandemic response as a one-issue attack. 63% of poll responders stated that they thought the PCs had done a good job in handling the pandemic, which, yes, is insane. But we've got to roll with those punches and find other issues to go after him for, like his waxy skin and the fact that he always looks like a department store mannequin wondering, am I about to have a heart attack? One very troubling election-related issue is Ford's proposed amendments to Ontario's Election Act and Election Finances Act. Bill 254, or the Protecting Ontario's Elections Act, was carried in its third reading just last Thursday and proposes, among other things, to double the maximum individual donations allowed to political parties. Pub quiz, guess who most rich white people with donation money to burn vote for? Basically, Ford is doing everything he can to line his party's pockets while denying poor people basic things like sick leave. Remember when I compared him to Ebenezer Scrooge way back in February? That was an insult to Scrooge. I apologize. The election is scheduled for June 2nd of next year, so we have just over a year to somehow convince dudes and old people to not help run the province into the ground even more. I wish I had better news, especially since you'd think that after everything that's happened this last year, the political needles would have moved even a little bit. But I hate the idea of leaving this on such a low note, and I do have a few more love letters for Doug to get through, so here we go. Dear Doug, you always look like you're trying to remember how to spell your own name and failing. Dear Doug, whenever you smile, I get the suspicious feeling a workers' union just got crushed. And my personal favorite, logged at 4:13 a.m. when I apparently woke up and jotted it down in a moment of genius. Dear Doug, Panda Premier Sweats beer? This has been The Focus. My guest tonight is Sydney Dunnis, the owner and founder of Femme Strong, a Toronto women's gym. We talked about the challenges and successes of being a small business owner during the pandemic, her goal to promote women's strength over traditional beauty expectations, and how having an arts background helps her as a fitness instructor. Take a look. Hi, Sydney. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm honored. Thanks for having me.
Yay! So I would love to start with you basically just telling me about La Femme Strong. Like what's it about? Why'd you start it? Yeah, go for it.
So my story is I was in theater, and when you're in theater and a woman, you tend to spend a lot of time in the gym because casting directors and directors are not terribly forgiving when it comes to your body and what they prefer, which is generally making yourself very, very small. So I spent a lot of time in gyms, primarily on treadmills, which is a horrible time, really. It's very boring and demeaning. And eventually, luckily, I found from being in the gym so much, I found strength training, which was a really bright point. It's something that you can confidently aspire to. Like you can add on weights, you can see results in that way, as opposed to weighing yourself or trying to look a certain way. So I found that and I loved it. And I ended up really accepting myself a lot more through strength training. And I decided to become a personal trainer because I wanted more women to feel that, to change the narrative in a way. And so upon becoming a personal trainer, I went searching for gyms to work at and didn't find any at the time. There's a lot more body positive spaces out there now, But at the time, there was really not, or at least none that I found, that I felt comfortable working at, because I didn't want to continue the fitness narrative of getting the beach body. So I decided to create my own. And then it became,
yeah, easy peasy.
it just made sense. So yeah, I created Femme Strong, and there's been a few different iterations since the very beginning, but it's always been about strength training. There will never be any mention of losing weight or beach body or any of that bullshit. We're all about strength training. It's a multidisciplinary studio. So the goal here is to allow women a chance to find the type of fitness, the type of strength training that makes them happy and that makes them want to continue. So that's what we do here. And it's for anybody who identifies as femme, is welcome here. If they feel like they belong, they're absolutely welcome. And our goal is to just fill this space with laughter and fun, and hopefully some getting strong.
I could use that after sitting at my computer desk and eating Doritos.
I mean, I do plenty of that as well, but
awesome. Oh my God.
Balance.
Gym. Amazing. Yes. Yeah. For the 45 seconds that I walked to my grocery store to get chips, that's enough exercise, right? Don't tell me I'm wrong.
Balance.
So, I think the idea of going from theater school to, because we went to theater school together, and the idea of going from theater school to owning a gym is such an interesting shift. And I was wondering if you could speak to maybe how the arts and your arts training influences you in your teaching nowadays.
I mean, in the way I just said, I very much understand a lot of why people come to the gym, and it very much, my experience being in theater and working with people where it's a very looks-based industry. So I think coming from that background has helped me understand and helped me come at fitness in a different way that I think people can relate to a little bit. And also, I mean, it's funny, a lot of trainers come from theater backgrounds, and I think for very similar reasons. Quite a few who actually work at my studio come from a theater background or performance background. And one of the things that's really great about it is, I mean, we're performing all the time. Yeah, exactly. And it's great. It kind of, yeah, like it's being, teaching classes is really great because I get to perform. That makes it sound like it's coming from a not genuine place, but it's sometimes I don't want to be super happy, and I'm able to pull that out.
Yeah. I am never super happy at like 8 o'clock doing burpees or whatever.
You don't do it enough.
I mean, correct.
No, but I do find it's, I mean, theater and live performance is, it's very much connecting to people in a very similar way as it is as a trainer. You're consistently trying to understand why people are there. You're trying to help them discover or help them find their journey to acceptance and a way to motivate themselves. As much as it's my job to motivate them, it doesn't come from me. It comes from what is going to make them happy doing the thing they're doing. So I think in the same way, theater is the study of people, so is having a gym.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love being able to tie so many things to into the arts that a lot of people might not assume are connected. So getting on to, I think, what everybody's talking about, the pandemic has been hugely detrimental to gym owners such as yourself. How have you innovated to keep yourself going and to keep your classes going? Like, what have you been doing?
Oh boy, that was a crazy weekend when it all went down. So what's really cool about what's very cool about my studio that I didn't do, it just happened, which is great, is it's a very small community, but we really focus on keeping people, and as opposed to, I don't want to get a million new faces in the door every day. I want to find a community and get to know everybody. And so we have a really, really strong community of women who come quite frequently. They get to know each other. There's been like, it's honestly a big community of friends at this point. So because we're a multidisciplinary studio, the goal in creating our scheduling is that you'll be able to work out really hard in a kettlebell class one day, and then the next day come to a yoga class and relax, and then the next day. So it's kind of, there's a lot of balance and routine. Right. So when the pandemic started, that routine got immediately interrupted. So it was actually not a business decision as so much as it was a decision to keep the community together in a time where we really needed each other. I see all of these women more than I see my best friends, right? I see them every day. So it was really important in that time when everybody's world was being turned upside down to keep a measure of routine. So as soon as the pandemic started, we knew we had to lock down. Literally, we took one day off while I learned how to use the internet. And the day after that, we were online. We started with just a private Facebook group where we were just doing live streaming. And then we've slowly adapted it into a Zoom platform, as has the world. So yeah, we've shifted technologically, but pretty much right from the get-go, it was about creating a routine, creating similar scheduling that people could do from their homes. And it was really cool to see everybody. I mean, right off the bat, we had somebody made like a bingo card about like how, like, can you name all of Sydney's cats? Can you like, we have all the pets that are interrupting all of our instructors, all of us learning how to use the internet. It was really a bonding experience for everybody, I think. And it's only continued.
That's awesome. I can't tell you the amount of times that my cat has interrupted interviews and Zoom calls and that kind of stuff. It's nice. I think it's nice and human, so I dig it. On top of the pandemic being difficult for gym owners, it's also been difficult, obviously, for small business owners. And in terms of like lack of government support or how much or when and that kind of stuff, I was wondering if you could speak to your experience with that. Because I think for a lot of us who are at home, we're confused and we can't be the only ones. And we want to fight for you guys, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't understand it. Like, so how have you been finding that?
It's been a ride. I think not being a very good business person has benefited me, because on the off chance my gym would ever go under, I saved a lot of money to get me through any emergency. So in a sense, I lucked out that I had something to fall back on.
Right.
However, if I had not had that, I would be in very serious trouble. The government, it hasn't been terrible. They have provided some assistance, but it was so slow getting off the ground. I mean, I don't know, everybody watching has probably been attempting some sort of assistance in some way, and they tend to announce something and then put it into play maybe 2 months later. So you're constantly wondering, when am I going to get this money? Am I going to be able to pay the rent before? Yeah, the timeline was very difficult to follow. Mm-hmm. Having things like the Ontario Support Grant is great. However, if I'm over here on Broadview Avenue, if I was down on King Street, that's not enough money for anybody to even pay 1 month of rent. So I know that a lot of studios have gone under, and I honestly don't blame them. It hasn't been enough. And the initial rent subsidy that came out for commercial spaces was, I don't know how many people know this, but it was decided by your landlord. So if your landlord didn't want to take part in it because they have to do lots of paperwork, because they don't get as much money for whatever reason, they decided. And so I, again, was lucky that my landlord very, not right off the bat, but eventually gave in. But I know many, many didn't. So I'm rambling a bit. It's been very confusing.
Sure. I think we've all learned to really see landlords in a different light in this last year. Oh, well.
Yeah, to the ones who didn't participate in the program, that's
yeah.
I'm gonna try not to swear too much on your show.
Are you kidding? Have you seen my show? No, I'm kidding. That's good. What would you consider your biggest success story over this past year, in a year filled with negative everything, literally everything? If you had to pick something that you were really, really proud of, what would it be?
That's tough. Sometimes it's hard, in a year like this, it's hard to really see your successes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would just be that we were able to, and I say we because honestly, I ask my community for everything. I poll them mercilessly. But we were able to stay together, and I think, and we really needed each other. It was really important that we still have an ongoing Facebook group where we post about not necessarily fitness. We really need each other, and we really have used this year to bond. And I think that would be my biggest success, I guess, is in maintaining this community. But it's not even my success, it's the success of the community itself. It's been amazing.
And you fostered that community, you created the community. So, I mean, pat on the back for you. I think
I needed them just as much. Trust me.
Fair. I love that. How can people support you right now? Like, where's your gym located? How do people find you and take classes?
So I actually, due to the pandemic, but also a whole bunch of things, I had to move my space. I'm on Broadview Avenue, just north of the subway station at 863 Broadview Avenue. That being said, we're still under lockdown, so we are on the internet. I mean, the biggest way, if anybody wanted to take part in classes, obviously you are welcome. I like to think we are a really fun community. We don't take ourselves too seriously. And if you try something new. I really pride myself on, we always provide affordable fitness. So our classes are $10 drop-in. You never have to commit to anything if you don't want to. That being said, I would love if anybody, as much as I would love you to support me, if you just supported your local fitness studio. Everybody needs it right now. I know that anytime on Facebook community groups, people are always promoting their favorite YouTube influencer, and that's great. However, there are some brick and mortar studios that are really struggling. So if everybody could support by going to a local class or something, that would be amazing.
And last question, I'm turning this into a running bit, and it's really fun. If you could say one thing to our glorious premier, Doug Ford, right now, what would it be?
Wow. That's loaded. I don't know, maybe make a working class friend, maybe one who's not white, and then maybe you'll care more about people who aren't rich and white.
Fair. I mean, it's good advice. It's good advice.
Yeah.
Actually, I said that was my last question. It's not. So, I mean, I was thinking that I would really like to get back into some semblance of shape after, a year. I know. A year of sitting at my computer and eating burritos and being on Twitter. And so I was wondering if you could, take me through at some point a simple exercise, easy, basic, all that kind of fun stuff at some point.
At some point, Claire, we're on a call right now, and I know as soon as you hang up that you are not going to call me for fitness. So get up.
What?
Get up. Here we go. I'm in my studio right now. Come on.
You know I don't do this.
Okay. You are dressed perfectly for it. It's great. Come on, get up.
Oh no, nobody's ever seen my lower half before.
You look great, kid. Okay, so we're gonna get started right away. So just gonna start warming up. I just want to get moving back and forth. Just because you've been sitting, nothing crazy. Just me. Okay, yeah, a little more, a little more, a little more. Okay, so I know it's gonna be your worst nightmare when I say the word burpee, and don't freak out, don't freak out. The reason why I think a burpee is a good place to start is 3 moves in 1. So you got your plank, you got your push-up, you got your squat. So I want you to do hands to the ground.
No.
We're gonna hop our feet back,
Okay. No.
push up,
Oh no. Oh God.
hop yourself into a squat.
Oh, no. Oh, you're breaking up. I actually know I can't hear
Claire?
you. I'm having some technical difficulties.
Claire,
Oh no.
Claire.
I want to end this episode on a fun note that isn't me embarrassing myself in front of a personal trainer. So I went hunting around for funny headlines and found one so magnificent that I just had to break my no non-Canadian content rule because it made me laugh so hard that I realized I couldn't keep this joy to myself. So here it is, friends. Mystery animal sighting in Krakow ends up being a croissant. Yes! It turns out the animal welfare workers were called to a residential area in Krakow because someone had called in to say that people were scared of an unknown animal that had been in a tree for 2 days. They weren't opening their windows because they were terrified that this fearsome creature would come in their houses. And it was a croissant! A croissant! They stared at a popular breakfast pastry in frozen terror for 2 whole days. I literally couldn't write a better joke if I tried. So thank you, Poland. I will think of you and your deadly menagerie of edible beasts for a long, long time. This has been Late Night in Canada. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.